Only recently did they finally admit that there actually was a waiting list and tried to explain it away. By the time we explained all the limitations of the car to them, only 50 would sign up. Well, if you sincerely want to market a product, you don't start out by describing the limitations of the product.
Tom Everhart is President Emeritus at Caltech. He served on GM's board of directors for 13 years.
I do not think General Motors tried hard to get the electric cars out rapidly. Now, whether the CEO of General Motors understood that, I don't know.
We had to ask permission of whoever we wanted to give a car to, and by the end, when we were low on cars, we had to write case statements. We tried to put the cars in hands of celebrities because they were, number one, the only ones that stood a chance of getting the car. The third grade science teacher didn't stand a chance. I had to write a resume for Mel Gibson and what he'd done and accomplished because the people I was talking to didn't believe that he warranted a car.
I was wondering, why do I have to fill this out, You had to tell them where your birthmarks were, I mean, it was everything, Have you recently had a proctoscope inserted into your, well, no. You had to get really specific about a whole bunch of things.
Consumers wanted it, but they regarded it as a limited vehicle and they expected to pay a limited price for it. And there's nothing irrational about the consumer that said that to us. That's a perfectly reasonable statement. You're giving me a vehicle that does less, I want to pay less. Okay. But unfortunately, I couldn't make it for less.
They argued things like money and they're too expensive to build, and yet they're building 4 a day. I mean, they were very hand-built cars with specialized components, and had they mass-marketed them, they of course would have come down.
As car companies made the case there was no demand, electric vehicle advocates thought they had a sympathetic ear with the appointment of environmental scientist Dr. Alan Lloyd as chairman of the California Air Resources Board.
First time I presided over that, I felt that the car companies weren't making a significant effort to do it, so I felt that, well, flog them harder, flog them often. They need to do better.
For the regulation, we felt needed to be changed drastically. And there was some movement that way, but it didn't go away.
While the car companies fought the mandate in Sacramento, GM quietly closed its EV1 assembly line and began laying off its sales force.
All of a sudden, we were not only taken off the project, but taken out of the company. They started with the ones with the biggest waiting list and the most customers, and the primary areas were the ones that they dismantled first. And so at the end of 2001, that was it in terms of my employment with General Motors.
Studying General Motors practices over the years, and I don't speak for the engineers and scientists who would really have liked to have done a better job with motor vehicle technology, but the executives at the top, their motto seemed to have been going backwards into the future. And that's what they've been doing for decades.
As a veteran consumer advocate, Ralph Nader used grassroots campaigns to make cars safer and more fuel efficient. He's familiar with the tactics used by the auto industry to resist change.
There are all kinds of ways that they can bring politicians to their knees. Once the auto companies get a long lead time, then they go to work, eroding, and then when the deadline is approaching, you say we can't do it, and there are going to be terrible consequences.
Automakers took the fight to a new level. They sued California's Air Resources Board. GM led the lawsuit, soon joined by Chrysler and several auto dealerships. As California withered under the pressure, the car makers found a powerful new ally, the federal government. Shortly after joining the suit, the Bush administration made another announcement.
Tonight I'm proposing $1.2 billion in research funding so that America can lead the world in developing clean, hydrogen-powered automobiles.
The federal government joined the car and oil industries to embrace a new clean car of the future. With more than $1 billion federal dollars up for grabs, over the next few years, the campaign for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles began to sway California.
Hello there and welcome to the California Fuel Cell Partnership, where we're fueling the future in a new and environmentally friendly way. Automakers, energy and technology providers, along with government agencies are voluntarily working together to commercialize the fuel cell for cars and buses. Soon you may see some of these cars cruising through your very own neighborhood.
We will not just dream about the hydrogen fueling stations. We will not just dream about the hydrogen cars. We will build it.
The hydrogen Hummer is not a production vehicle, it's a concept vehicle. It's a way for Governor Schwarzenegger to have a property at various events that he goes to when he unveils a new hydrogen refueling station at LAX, for example.
I'm going to encourage the building of a hydrogen highway to take us to the environmental future.
While hydrogen fuel cells offered an exciting alternative sometime in the future, what would happen to the technology of today? What would happen to the electric car? It all came down to a decisive meeting at California's Air Resources Board. Citizens and industry alike testified as CARB prepared to vote on the fate of the electric car.
I'd also like to thank all the other stakeholders, particularly also the auto industry, who is going to also have a major impact here.
I like the fact that hydrogen might be in a position to displace the petroleum products.
I share your optimism on fuel cells, just not to the extent. I think it's a bait and switch strategy. I hope I'm wrong.
I'm concerned that we've picked numbers that are based entirely on fuel cells. What if fuel cells don't work?
It seems that most of the recent changes to the mandate have been designed to ease the burden on the automakers. You're part of the Environmental Protection Agency, not the Corporate Profit Protection Agency.
I think that we've been a contributor to this marketplace too.
I agree. But remember, there are many of you, we just had, when I was giving more time to the auto manufacturers.
Lou Browning, I think, had the job to present the EPRI report, and he had been promised 10 minutes.
One of the things we found is...
I would appreciate if you could summarize this in 3 minutes.
Okay, I thought I had 10. But
Helen Lloyd cut him off, whereas he had given the automakers sort of unlimited time earlier in the day.
And the improvements we need in fuel cells are to get, mainly to get the cost down.
In addition, we've recently certified and introduced the Honda FCX fuel cell vehicle.
Largely, this work is being pushed forward through the California Fuel Cell Partnership, which has been very valuable in pulling together the diverse interests.
Any new information on batteries that sort of didn't mesh with the overall conclusions was really just shut out very fast by Alan Lloyd.
Let's get it clear, I'm not trying to show any bias or anything here.
And there were 80 people who came to speak for electric cars and only 2 industry representatives on the side to kill the mandate.
We have 4 people out of 78 who are supporting this proposal. How did we end up with this?
This is a tough program. It's a revolutionary program. It pushes the automakers hard, and they don't like it, and they push back hard. And as you deliberate today on the fate of this program, I urge you to summon all of your political courage to make the hard choices that you know you need to make on this program. Because when it comes to protecting the health of the people of California, there are simply no more easy choices to make.
I saw this as losing this wonderful opportunity that we had really invested a great deal in the infrastructure, in the technology. It was like the rug was pulled out.
They gave it away. And to me, that's just sad. It's a sad commentary on the way our society and our system in the United States works.
When GM introduced the EV1, California was setting the toughest auto pollution standards in the nation. 10% of all cars sold here this year were to be zero-emission vehicles. But California dropped those standards after being sued by automakers.
But a lot of the vehicles, the Honda vehicles, the General Motors vehicles, were all leased, and nobody had the option to buy. So the automakers took advantage of that and pulled all the cars off the road. They weren't willing to let people take the cars and actually drive them and keep driving them like normal cars.
I tell you, when I noticed that GM was losing interest was when I wanted to release my car, and they wouldn't let me.
I've never had a product I've had to beg and fight and cajole and persist so much to get.